Good morning, everybody. Happy summer to you. We're already in summer, right? Thanks to everybody for coming. I appreciate it. You know, when I started doing this 24 years ago, when we were doing estate planning and financial planning, beg your pardon? In high school, yeah. And hey, I'm coming up on 47. 47. I know I don't look it, but hey, that's that. Yeah, that's the Merle Norman. You're a baby. I know, I'm still a baby. So when I started doing this 25 years ago, it was like paramount, most important to people to have estate planning and pass things off to their kids, you know? And today that has changed a lot. You know, it's not about the kids anymore. I think most of the parents that I talk to are probably pretty angry with their kids or put out with them, or some of their grandkids too. So there's all kinds of topics about that. Our disclaimers, disclosures, I'll give you just 2 or 3 seconds to read that. The good thing is we're recording this, I hope. So we're recording it. We'll be emailing it all to you, so you'll be able to have a chance to go back through it and read all that in detail. That's right. Just real quick, I wanted to just, everybody knows us. I think everybody is familiar with our system here, except maybe John and Angela in the back. But essentially, it's a tri-disciplinary practice. We have a law firm, we have a tax firm, and we have a financial firm. And we are forced, because I actually forced them to work together. I tried working with other people's taxes and other people's lawyers, and we get them into the same room, and there's this problem that comes up every single time. Yeah, and it's called not invented here. Right? So if it's not invented here, it's no good. So I bring your lawyer and your CPA in and your financial planner in, and we're all having a conversation about maybe doing a charitable trust. And the lawyers and the CPAs have never done a charitable trust, but all they know is, oh, I don't know, that's bad, let's not do that. Because nobody wants to take liability. So that's why we had to put them all together and force them to work together. And when we work together, it really does a lot of things. It creates some coordination that goes on all year round that just doesn't happen generally, especially when the tax person and the investment person can get together and talk about things in November, right? Because by the time your taxes roll around and you've done your taxes, it's too late to make any changes. So to really do tax planning, and what is the number one cost when it comes to investing? It's taxes. Taxes are the number one cost when it comes to investing. You know, so people try to spare a fee here or you know, this there, but really 30% of it is taxes. So I don't know why this is under housekeeping, but for housekeeping purposes, you know, that's why we're doing this, is because we have these problems out there, and it's impossible for one person to do it all. You have to have a team of people. So just real quick, I wanted to say hello to Henry. He heads up the tax team. Lynn's upstairs, who heads up the legal team. And we have Blake back there that helps me out with the financial planning and also managing the investments. And we have Jennifer back there who helps put these things together and helps with the paralegal and stuff like that. So that being said, please, if you would, just take a moment to put your phones on vibrate or silent so we don't interfere with any of this very important information, because this than what we've normally done. And so if you have questions, and we have a smaller group today, so that's a good thing. If we have questions, raise your hand and let's talk about it, because if you have a question, chances are somebody else is thinking the same thing. And here's the other thing too. Today, about stocks and bonds necessarily. This is not about price earnings ratios and alphas and betas and you know, international stocks, small caps, large caps, and all that stuff. This is really more about psychology today, you know, psychology. And so I tell people that really, if you want to get into the business that I'm in, which is financial services and estate planning and that type of thing, the number one, probably best major that you can have is not finance, it's what? Psychiatry, psychology. It really is. I really feel like I'm more of a psychologist than anything, because I also sort of mediate family problems, you know. And so we just had that happen 2 days ago, where we were mediating, you know, this trustee wants to take out money, this trustee doesn't, and what's the best thing? How can we handle that? So we came to a middle of the road. But today is a little bit different. Today we're talking about not money in particular, but sort of wealth in general, you know. and the psychology of wealth, and especially how this affects different generations and how these generations are coping. And each generation and why it's important. But let's think about, why is talking about money important? Why is money important in general? Well, we all know we have to eat, and you need to have a place to live, and all those basics, right? But beyond that, what is it? There's a level of stability, correct? A level of security, if emergencies happen, which they always do. Who in here has never had an emergency? Right. They always occur in life. It's just a matter of when. I was getting ready to go out on vacation. I stepped into the shower to get ready to go on my week vacation. And I knew something was wrong immediately because there was no hot water. What happened? So I walked down into the basement and then oh no. The hot water heater busted. It's only like 4 or 5 years old, and it's just the entire basement. And I'm getting ready to go on a week vacation. Man, my heart just sank, because I couldn't leave, obviously. I had to handle that. But I did get out of town that day. But things happen. But, if you think about money and what it can do for you or what it's done for you or what it can do, essentially it's an extension of your will, right? And hopefully you have good will. There's a lot of people out there who have bad will and use their money, their billions, to do things that are not so good. But there are people out there that do good things, like Bill Gates. They have their foundations and whatnot. But essentially, someone who has a lot of wealth can sort of project the things that they care about and the things that they feel onto the scene or into their community. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think so. So it's interesting because if you look at the kids coming up today, a millennial, right? So a millennial age 25 today, when Carmen Battaglia was age 25, okay, he made 20% more. I should say a millennial today is making 20% less at age 25 than what Carmen made at age 25 in general. So millennials, in real terms, with inflation adjusted, millennials are making 20% less at the same stage in life. And guess what? They're going to also live a lot longer, right? And this is a shocking statistic that came from Money Magazine. A wealthy family, there's a 70% chance that that wealth will be gone by the second generation. The second generation. So if you think of the Rockefellers or something like that, the Rockefellers would have lost their money a long time ago, except that they had trusts. They had family trusts and legacy trusts. Okay? But by the third generation, it's almost all gone. It's almost all gone. You see that? So you have to ask yourself, and I think a lot of people do, what am I saving for? Am I saving to pass this on to my kids and grandkids who will most likely squander it? Or do I want to go ahead and take a cruise? Right? Well, I can tell you there's a lot more cruises going on. And going to Europe, the euro is super cheap right now. It's a great time to go to Europe. So here's some conversations. All right? When you're talking to kids about money, you don't want, and everybody knows this. When you're talking to kids about money, you don't want to just say, lay down the law, right? They don't respond so well to that. Do this, do that, do this, don't do that. It's better like when we were in law school they used the Socratic method. The Socratic method works great because it makes you think. You ask them questions, have conversations. What about this or what about that? So one great question is, you talk about you and then ask questions. So for you, what's something in life that you thought you never could do? And maybe if you're talking to a child or even a teenager, what's something in life that you never thought you could do? Did you ever think you could be on student council? Did you ever think you'd be able to go to Ireland for, an exchange student program? Things like that. What did you expect to be doing differently at this age? What did you think you would be doing now? And what's different about it? And where do you think you went off? Did it go better? Did it go worse? How does that make you feel? Because a lot of this is feelings. How you want to try to get into their brain and become part of the psyche when you're talking about money. What's the most important thing in your life right now? Is it a new car? Is it monetary? Or hopefully it's non-monetary. Hopefully it's family and friends and health, things like that. But you can get stressed out if you have a lot of debt and more expenses than you do income. What are you most proud of? That's a great question. What have you done that you're most proud of? And what's a dream that you have for the future? Now, see, none of these are actually talking about money specifically, but it sort of opens the door of, okay, well, if you have this dream of opening a tiki hut in Santiago, Chile, well, you might want to think about learning Spanish. You might want to get some savings, have some savings in order to buy that tiki hut down there. Things like that. I've always wanted a tiki hut. And what are you worried about in the future? This is one of the questions that I ask people when I first meet with them. What are your top 3 problems? What top 3 things bother you the most? And you know what? The first 2 are kind of, when they give you the third one, that's the real one. The first 2 are kind of not so important, but when they give you the third problem, that's the real problem. So, what are you worried about in the future? In teaching children about money, when I was in high school, we had this great class called civilization or something like that. How to be a good citizen. Citizenship, that's what it was. So we had a great class called citizenship. And citizenship was one of these things where it kind of taught you, when you get on a bus and there's a pregnant lady, you let them sit down. If you're driving on the highway and you're going slow, get in the right-hand lane. If someone is walking in and they can't open the door, help them out. Because the idea is that we're all in this together. We all live in Georgia together. We all live in the metro Atlanta area together. Let me over so I can get out of this lane so you can go, And it's the coordination and the give and the take and learning that, we're all in this together. We're in society together. So, good quote, if you don't teach your kids about the ABCs of money, they're going to end up with a D and an E. Debt and entitlement. Now, what does that sound like, debt and entitlement? That's our government. Thank you. That's our country. We are indebted to $21 trillion. And we're adding another $1.5 trillion to that debt every single year because of entitlements. We're entitled. And I'm not going to talk about the yes or the no or the good or the bad or the right or the wrong of that. I'm just saying that's where we are. We're in debt and we're all entitled, and the debt is not going to stop until it just ends dramatically and terribly. So that's why I do worry about the future. I'm not worried so much about myself, but I can tell you my nieces and nephews, I'm definitely concerned about them. I'm not worried about you. I'm not really worried about your kids, but your grandkids, I am worried about them. And that's why one of the reasons we wanted to do. So, financial values. The first thing you want to do before passing on financial values to your children and your grandchildren is to figure out what your own financial values are. And believe it or not, it's very different for all kinds of people. Some people really, really care about education. I'm totally behind that. Some people just want to acquire rental properties. Okay, well, that's your thing, Other people are really involved in charity. Other people are really involved in traveling and doing missionary work. So it doesn't necessarily matter what it is, but you have to kind of identify what those are. If you're saving money, what are you saving money for? Most of my clients will tell me, well, I'm saving money for a retirement or an emergency. Most of my clients recognize that, you know what, I'm getting older, people are living longer, there are going to be medical care, there are going to be needs there. Are those expenses getting any cheaper? No, man, those things are inflating faster than anything. Medical costs are going skyrocketing. So that's probably worth saving for. Is a teenager even thinking about long-term care ever? I remember as a kid, I never thought I'd be 40. I thought that was ancient. Now I'm 46, 47, I'd like to be 40 again. But it's all about your perspective. So spending. What are you spending money on? A friend of mine once told me that I was talking about buying this car that I really wanted, and he said, you know what? I was like, no, I just can't do it. It's a depreciating asset. It's a depreciating asset. And he looked at me, he said, you are a depreciating asset. Well, think about that. Yes, I am. We are all depreciating assets, are we not? We're getting older and older and older and older. And you can't change your model year. You are the model year that you are. I'm a 1971 model. And, you know, when 2060, 2000, I don't, you know, my grandma, bless her heart, just passed away, 101. June 21st, she'd have been 102, right? And she didn't take any medicine, you know? So hopefully there's that side of the longevity there. So spending, what are your feelings about spending money? Some people get really nervous when they spend money. I'll tell you this story about a client that I had down at Lynbrook. Anybody know where Lynbrook is? It's a really nice area, pretty expensive. And she had, I don't know, a estate of $5 million. We could have $1 million in cash that we could just get at any time. But she had a real problem giving out money to a cab driver, right, to go get her hair done because we finally had to stop her from driving, right? So she just could not give the cab driver money to go get her hair done. Just couldn't do it. So we set it up that the cab company would service her, take her wherever she wanted to go, and they would just send us a bill once a month. And she didn't see it, and we paid it for her. And it was only a couple $100, but it changed her life. Changed her life. Isn't that ridiculous? But she could not give them money.
Did she verbalize why? Or just
I don't think we actually verbalized it, but we did realize it, and we fixed the situation. My grandmother, the one that just died, she would not go out to a restaurant other than Piccadilly or Morrison's. You guys have had that family member, right? They won't go anywhere else but Piccadilly and Morrison's, you know. Bennigan's, forget that. No way. No way. So it's about spending money. I have a real problem spending money on things that you're not just going to use once or twice. But at the same time, I'm willing to spend money on like maybe a nicer bedroom suite, you know, things that I think I'm going to use a lot. So it's just a matter of, you know, how you feel about it. And then debt. How do you feel about debt? You know, most of my clients are really debt adverse. They would rather take money out of an account that's earning 8% and go buy a car when they could get free financing. Did you know that? Just because they don't want to have that debt. They would rather take money out of an account earning 8% and go buy a car, pay cash for it, when they could get financing for 0%. Because they don't want that debt. Now, I understand that, but does that really make sense? Huh? Yeah. You're guilty of that, Earl, aren't you? And then income. How has your income influenced your life? Are you taking a lot of income, and are you able to do things with it? Are you being philanthropic with it? Are you giving money away to charities and stuff like that? Is that becoming part of your life? And again, this is all but those are questions that you want to ask yourself, you know, your family, and then because here's what's happening. I mean, you want to have the guys at the top are kind of dictating what the rest of the group's going to do. Okay? You're the patriarch, you're the matriarch of the family. All right? So kind of what you sort of sets the tone. And more importantly, you have the money. That really sets the tone. Right? So you're passing things down to the next generation. These are the things that we believe in, and this is how we would like our family to live their life. You know, and one way to talk about that with kids is to talk about mistakes because, you know, they think you've never made a mistake. You know, we didn't, right? Or we think that, and they think we always did. But how old were you when you made your financial mistake? You know, what happened? Why did it happen? I can tell you my biggest financial mistake. My dad's a pharmacist. When I was a little kid, I don't know if you remember this. We had Ceclor and Keflex and Darvocet and Prozac just came out. Well, my dad was a pharmacist for Eli Lilly, and so he had a whole lot of drugs in his garage, you know, and stuff. You know how the pharmacists give out, you know, all these little things, calendars and weights, paper weights, and all these little toys. So I'm thinking to myself, you know, I'm the young entrepreneur, and I'm thinking, you know, we've got all this stuff in the garage, seems to be replenishing itself rapidly. I'm going to have just sort of a garage sale and sell this stuff, you know, these pharmaceutical drugs, Keflex, Ceclor, Darvocet, you know, and, you know, oh gosh, I was 9 years old, maybe, not even. And, you know, this one kid comes in there and he sees this book on diabetes, really nice book. So I sold it to him for $30. Now, $30 in 1980, $30 in 1980 was a good bit of money, right? Well, so I'm having my shop, and I'm about 3 o'clock, time to close up, I guess, Well, you can imagine what happened, right? I mean, parents come home, mom comes home, sees what's happening here. I'm blistered real bad, right, for a while there. And then I had to go back to all the people that I had sold stuff to and return their money, right? And I felt extra bad about this kid who bought the diabetes book because his sister or his brother had gotten diabetes. And I didn't know that, but that's why he wanted the book and was willing to pay $30 for it. So I had to give him back the money, but we let him keep the book, So it worked out well. But, that was a lesson to me that, I didn't have the licensure, to have that operation going, right? And so I got into a lot of trouble by that, and I did learn that, before I start selling pharmaceuticals to the street kids, I need to check on the current regulations, maybe maybe have a pharmacist, those kinds of things, because you can see how that could have turned into a terribly serious thing, where someone had bought some Darvocet, OD'd on it, and I got dead kids in the neighborhood, and I'm in juvie for the rest. That worked out, okay, but that was a good lesson. So you want to teach your kids about the same sort of thing about values, and it's a little bit different depending on their age, especially when they get to the point where they can start seeing that there's a material difference in lifestyles. The kid down the road, they've got new cars, or they just put in a new pool, or they got an RV, or they're always going to Disney, or there's all these things going on. And it's not so much that one person's better than another person. Those people I've seen a lot of times where people are living way beyond their means, way beyond their means. They're driving a Ferrari, but they've got $80,000 in credit card debt. It's out there, trust me. And a lot of them live in California. I know Susie's family has 3 really nice cars, and that seems fun. We'd love to have a new car, but that's really not a necessity. Things like this. We're happy to help you pay for college, but it's important for you to take on some financial responsibility yourself. Things like that. It's nice to be able to go out to dinner and order takeout a lot, but we prefer to put that money toward our savings. Maybe we want to retire early. Things like that. So anybody have any suggestions of anything that's worked really well for you with kids or grandkids? No? Yes, sir.
Teach the children and grandchildren about budgeting.
Budgeting, and that's a very good thing. So when you're talking about family budgets and family financial decisions, you want to involve the kids. You can involve the kids, and you can even involve the grandkids. Give them a budget when you go out to eat or when they go shopping. Yes, Blake. Depend on one person, that's yourself. That's a good one. Let kids participate in family budget meetings. Sit together as you pay bills and review finances. I don't know how you're going to get them to do that, but sometimes I can't even get a lot of my wives to do that. Sit with your husband and see what's happening there. He's gonna die one day, and you're not gonna know even how to get into the account. You're not even gonna know where the accounts are. Bring the kids to the bank. Bring them in here. Let us meet them. And this is where I think you were going with this. When kids have an allowance or they have money, give them the 3-bucket strategy. The 3-bucket strategy, because this is really pretty good psychology when you're coming up to start thinking this way. All right, kids want instant gratification. Americans do. So you're going to have to spend some right away. Right? So every dollar they get, you're going to have to spend a little. You got to figure, are we going to spend 35 cents, 40 cents, 50 cents? I don't know. Let's check the other buckets. The next bucket's saving and investing. You can talk to kids about, you want this BB gun. I think every little boy, that's one of the first things he wants is a BB gun, a Red Ryder. Then you want a go-kart, or whatever you want. You got to save for those things. And if you teach them to save, then that really helps. And then, of course, you want to have a little bit going to charity. You want to sort of help them become a good part of the community and learn about charitable giving and why it's so important and why it's important to help other people that are not as well off or things you care about. I'm very involved with Fur Kids. Fur Kids is Georgia's largest no-kill adoption charity. We go down to all these humane societies where they're getting ready to kill pets and animals, and we take them and we save them. And what we're doing right now, because there's a shortage of cats up in the Northeast, we're going down there, picking up a whole bunch of cats and shipping them up north and just adopting them out. And it's fantastic. But that is something that's important to me. Okay. So you want to teach them also, the ABCs. This looks like a board table at IBM. But you want to teach the kids, about investing, compound interest. Einstein called that the most powerful force in the universe. If you look at compound interest, it really does. There's a great book out there called The Wealthiest Man and the Richest Man in Babylon. Anybody ever read that book? It's like 20 pages. Richest Man in Babylon. Kind of interesting, but it actually is a book about interest and savings going all the way back to ancient Sumeria and ancient Babylonia. That's how old it is. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is getting the kids involved in companies. A lot of them like Disney or McDonald's, companies like that. I wouldn't eat at McDonald's, but I guess if kids I did when I was a kid, right? We all did, I guess. Open a savings account. I had a little savings account when I was a kid. You put $100 in there and just kind of watch it grow. It doesn't do a whole lot these days, but remember you had a little passbook? Had a little blue book, and that was kind of fun. Have the little book savings you write in there. That. I don't know if they have that these days, but they ought to have something like that. But these days, everything's on an app. Everything is on their phone. And it's kind of interesting if you want to talk about market ups and downs. I kind of like to look and see what's happening in the news, and I'll know that if it's a down day, it's going to be up tomorrow, or just talk about how things affect the markets and stuff, especially if it's geopolitical. Because that seems to be a little more interesting than just, okay, there was a poor earnings report that came out yesterday, and then bond prices fell, and no, that's not exciting. But Syria, got bombed by Russia or Russians, and Raytheon, and Trump goes over to Saudi Arabia and sells $16 billion worth of F-18s, and next thing you know, Lockheed Martin stock goes 20%. That's more exciting, I think. Teenagers. Notice there's no words up here, just pictures, because no one really knows what to say. And I don't think there's anything you can say, but I will say this. When they get to this stage, now is when it's time to start letting them fail. Okay? We've all done it. One of the important things in life is failing on your own. And I have a sister, she's like a helicopter mom, and she's going to pick up everything and do everything for this child, right? I'm trying to explain to her that, failure is part of life, and it's a necessity. So when they get to this period of time and they have these things that they want to do, they want to go to concerts, they want to go off with their friends or whatever, if they have an allowance or they have a job, in my opinion, teenagers should only be doing 3 things in the summer. This is my opinion. What are those 3 things? Work. School.
Chores. Cut grass.
They do that anyway. What else? Travel. And I'll tell you this, because travel is the #1 educator by far. It's the #1 educator. Travel. Now, the best thing that you could do is combine those. You have exchange student course in Russia, right? You're getting credit for it, so you're in school. You're over there living with a family, so you're learning a culture. And let me tell you one thing, when you get back, you are appreciative. You are appreciative. And one thing I'll always be grateful, because you're in the Rotary Club, aren't you? No? Anybody in the Rotary Club? All right. I will always be appreciative of the Rotary Club, because that's exactly what the Rotary Club did for me. They took me as an exchange student and sent me over to Moscow to live with a Rotary family, to go to school, right? So I'm traveling, I'm getting educated, and I'm kind of working, and I can't officially work and earn money, but all those things at the same time. And let me tell you, when you get back to America, you will kiss the ground. I did, And so teenagers, I think, one of the best things that all these kids to do is go to Venezuela. Sit them down in Venezuela. It's cheap. It's cheap right now. Now, I'm kind of joking, right? But what happens if you go to Venezuela, or you go to a South American country, right, or a third world country, right? You realize the differences, right? And that communism and that ideology and Marxism sounds great, but it does not work in practice. You know, and they come back to America and they're ready to work and they're ready to get educated and they're motivated. What do you think? Is that a good idea? Absolutely. Don't send them somewhere nice. Send them somewhere second world. Third world is even better. Send them to India. Right? Well, I'll just tell you a story about Oglethorpe. I'm involved with Oglethorpe. We had 80 students that we sent over to India for an entire year to go to school. When the year was up, every single student but 2 opted to stay another year. Can you believe that? I was shocked. But that's the truth of the matter, because it was such a life-changing event for these students. And you wouldn't, there's no Chick-fil-A, there's, the internet is spotty. Running water is not always available, spotty, exactly. But out of all these kids, 78 of them decided to stay another year in India. And those kids will be forever changed. Amazing. But with teenagers, you've got to give them limits. You don't need to be the lender of last resort, if you know what I mean, right? They've got a trip planned, but they didn't save up enough money to go on the trip. They're going to have to, can't come to daddy and say, hey, daddy, bail me out. No, that was bad planning. You're going to have to suffer the consequences. Do it early. Make sure consequences are realized early, because later in life it's too late. I just went to go see a client the other day. I was shocked. Her daughter, 50 years old, probably 400 pounds, 50 years old, 2:30 in the morning, sleeping, right? Living off of her mom. What's that, Blake? 2:30 in the afternoon, excuse me. Yeah, we didn't show up at 2:30 in the morning, as a SWAT team would, but 2:30 in the afternoon, there she's sleeping, and I guess she doesn't have a job, I don't know, but she's just living off her mom. They're 50 years old almost. So, as I was saying, send college students out into the world, and once they get out of the nest, keep them out of the nest. Discuss college and options. If you have questions about how to do any of this, talk to Blake. He just raised 2 girls. They just turned 18. One's going to Georgia Tech. The other one's going to Georgia. Right? One of them already has a full-time career with Amazon. Or is it Google? Amazon. Right. So, but discuss college is expensive. It is really expensive. So, maybe they want to go out of state. Well, we got to talk about that. Right? Now, when I was coming up, when I went to college, I was lucky because I got a full boat scholarship to go to Oglethorpe. But when you go to law school, they don't give you full boat. You don't give you scholarships. You got to take out loans, right? But back in those days, I could sign for the loan myself. I didn't have to have a parent to co-sign with me. Well, I think those days are over. These days, you have to have a parent co-sign, And the reason for that, obviously, is a lot of the kids just said, hell with it, I'm not going to pay it. Because it was kind of a scam. I mean, I still have student loans, and I'm logged in at 8.25%. 8.25%. I'm paying them. I'll be paid off for too long, but 8.25%. That's basically guaranteed by the Department of Education. So if I default, they haven't lost a dime. They don't have anything at risk, really. These banks. Do you know the #1 asset of the U.S. government? The #1 asset of the U.S. government. We have lots of liabilities, Student debt. Student loans, that's our #1 asset. Student loans. Good luck.
They should not call that a loan. I managed that program for the federal government. Yeah. It is not a loan. A loan allows a lender to deny or accept the individual in making that loan. This loan program, called a student loan, doesn't give the lender that option. You get the money whether or not the lender wants to do it, because the government backs it up. So technically it's not a loan.
Right. So Dr. Patalia was saying that those really are not loans because the government's backing them up and everybody can get one, and the lender doesn't have an opportunity to say no, right? So help your student develop a career plan for college. Now, you're not going to be able to say, what's your major going for a freshman? Most freshmen will know. I mean, some freshmen will know, but most will not. I mean, honestly, it's probably after your first year of college, you're just probably trying to get things figured out. Your first year in college is confusing. It's completely different. You don't have someone watching over you all the time and saying you got to be here and be there. I mean, at Oglethorpe, we were taught to be adults, and if you make a mistake and you didn't do the work and you didn't do the reading, you get an F and you fail. And we had a lot of people drop off that first semester. But when those that graduated did well. Working on a semester budget, your budget per semester. How much can you spend on beer? How much can you spend on dating? How much can you spend on this? The pitfalls of credit cards and bank fees. I will tell you this, when you come out of college, there's banks all over the place giving you free credit cards. You know, the interest rates are high and the penalties are hefty. And as soon as you start that, it's just a downward spiral, you know. So one of the things I think is smart is, you know, when the kid is in high school even, let them have a little credit card with maybe a $500 limit on it, you know, and show them how to pay that off every month. And, you know, because it makes sense, because these days you can get 2% cash back, you can get Sky Miles, you can get all kinds of things. So if you're not using a credit card and paying it off every month, you're leaving money on the table. I mean, I fly to Brazil back and forth every year just off Sky Miles. I'll be earning Sky Miles today when you guys eat those sandwiches. So enjoy them. And then, of course, you know, you want to check in regularly with these kids. You know, how are things going? There's always going to be a problem. There's always going to be something, you know. But hopefully you can engender them to talk to you about it instead of trying to hide it from you. You know, because things will come up. They will make mistakes. They will do something stupid. They're probably going to get in a wreck. You know, there probably will be alcohol involved at some point, just the way it is. So just let them know that it's better to talk to you. And one thing about Rick, he's not here right now, but one thing about Rick is he has his daughters that they know no matter where they are, 3 o'clock in the morning, if they've been drinking, they can call him and he won't ask any questions. He'll just come pick them up. You know, doesn't ask any questions. So I really respect. So the Boomerang kid. This is that 50-year-old lady that was still living with my client who's just turned 90. So when they move back in, a lot of times, you know, you've heard of these generations where they'll get out of college and they can't find a job and then they have to come back home. Well, I know that's really hard to just lock them out. So you need to explain, you know, we need to have a conversation here. What are the financial arrangements? They need to have some financial skin in the game. They need to be paying some rent, paying some utilities, you know, roommates, friends. Who are they going to come over? What time are you going to be here? What are the time limits of ingress and egress? Rent, food costs, other financial contributions. Because I've seen them, they'll just come in and they'll just live there. And they won't pay anything. And they'll eat the food and they'll use electricity and they'll watch the TV and whatever, I mean, just whatever they want to do. And they have no consideration or no thought at all about paying their parents. Never occurs to them. You'd be surprised how often this happens. So, you know, you better be prepared for conflicts. So it's better off teaching these kids early. You know, and that's what Blake did a great job of. He let them know right on early that, hey, college is on you. Life is on you. All right? Don't be coming to me to fix your life. Don't be coming to me to pay for things. I am not the lender of last resort. I think that's pretty obvious. Did anybody see this? So these parents decided they had enough, right? And they're going to take the law into their own hands, so they went to the court system. So they basically sued their son, who would not get out. He's like, Michael's like, been living in his parents' house for 8 years, and he calls the ruling outrageous. He said he would appeal the decision. So the judge says, well, after a discussion with your mother, we have decided that you must leave this house immediately. You've got 14 days to get out and do not come back.
How come the parents couldn't say that?
The parents did say that, but they couldn't enforce it. They couldn't enforce it. They left him lots of notes. They gave him some cash even. They tried everything they could, short of, forcibly moving him out, right? But this is where we are now. Good precedent. So let's talk about all the generations. We've talked about the psychology of wealth. Let's talk about kind of the ways to, handle things. So when you're in your 30s, 20s, 30s, you know, you want to sharpen negotiation. In the corporate America, people are moving around the corporate ladder all the time because we work with big companies like Mercedes-Benz, Lockheed Martin, J.M. Huber, some others we worked with. But in the corporate America, you see how these people move around. We do the 401k plan for Mercedes-Benz, and they just moved their national headquarters from New Jersey's down to here. You see it's off of, in Alpharetta here, off of the, what is that road? Abernathy. It's right off of Abernathy. So that's the new Mercedes-Benz headquarters. Well, they let 700 people go in New Jersey. And they came down to Atlanta and they had to hire 700 people, right? Well, in that, you know, as they're hiring those people, I mean, a higher salary today means maybe more Social Security later, more 401k money later. So one of the first things you want to do is open an IRA or the 401k plan. I've got companies that we work with that they're giving these people free money. We're going to match your money. For you put in $5,000, we're going to put in $5,000. And do you know they do not do it? They do not do it. I mean, I've got one company that I work with. If you've put in 5%, they will put in 10. You put in 5, they will put in 10, and they do not do it. They cash it in early. That's right. So, you know, I have to ask people, what are your goals here? When I sit down with people, what is all this money for? What have you been working your whole life to do? Buy a boat, cash out, and go buy a boat and sell the world? No, that's not what they say. They say, I want to retire securely. Retire securely and have enough money to live on and not run out of money. That's what they tell me. Anybody feel differently? Yeah. That's the financial goal, is to have security and get out and stay out of debt. Debt is the killer. For people who are in debt, their life is 20% more expensive on average. Any questions? Pretty obvious, right? So that's in the 30s, 20s, 30s. Your working years get a little older. You want to make sure that you know, have a strategy. You kind of have identify your retirement age. How much money am I going to need then? How much income am I going to need? Income drives all the things. You obviously want to continue to tax defer thing. Don't pay taxes now, pay taxes later. And the idea is that while you're working, your income tax bracket is higher. So you want to put money into these accounts to defer the taxes. Then when you retire, because you're no longer earning income, your tax bracket is lower, and thus when you're taking the money out, it's not as painful. Plus, when you're 65 in Georgia, you really have, what is it, Henry, 50,000? So when you're 65, for each person, you get $65,000 of income that's not taxed. So that's really great for retirees. Now, why did Georgia do that? To attract retirees. Why do we like retirees? They don't drive during rush hour. That's one. Number two, they're in bed usually by 10, so they're not loud, right? They've usually got money, so they're spending money, going to the grocery store, whatever they're doing, right? And they need medical care, right? So it drives our medical, you know. So there's a lot of good reasons to have seniors, and they usually vote, and they usually vote early. So municipalities and states like those things, and they're rarely violent, you know. Prioritize retirement over college. That's what I want to tell you. Nobody's going to give you a loan to retire. They'll give you all the loans you need to go to school, but they're not going to give you a loan for your retirement. So do not sacrifice your retirement for college. Does everybody hear me? So you got a kid that needs to go to college, right? You need some money for tuition. Don't you reach into that 401k. Don't reach into that IRA and pull that out, pay the taxes on it, and then do that. Because that is your money for retirement. Okay? Get a student loan if you have to. And if you absolutely have to, default on it later. Okay? But don't default on your retirement. Does that make sense? And protect your health. That's the number one thing that we all have, folks, your health. It's the number one thing, because when your health goes, nothing else really matters. It really doesn't. I hurt my back once when it was like winter time. There was, you know, it had frozen on the little ledge right there, and I couldn't see it. And I walked out of the back door, and I just stepped on that ice. And I don't know what I did, but I twisted it. And I mean, it would take me 30 minutes to get upstairs. It was terribly painful. I mean, I just couldn't do anything. And you know what I cared about at that time? Nothing but getting rid of that pain, right? I don't know if you guys have been there before, but it was horrible. And I didn't care about anything else, you know? And let me tell you, when that was better, I was very appreciative. So, I mean, the health is the number one thing that we have. And then, like anything else, if you got some problems, you don't know what to do, get some professional help. Usually we can just handle these things in a matter of minutes, because we've seen. Some people like to retire early. I like that idea. But how much money do you really need to have? I guarantee you it's a lot more than you think. What does early retirement look like? Anybody watch International House Hunters on the History Channel? Or I love International House Hunters. They go all around the world and they're basically comparing different houses and condos and stuff. But you know, a lot of these people will go down to Middle America or Mesoamerica, you know, Panama and some places like that, and they're always looking at, you know, places to live down there, and it's always a lot cheaper, you know, but they can get a great place for like $1,000 a month. I saw one last night where they were in Italy, in northern Italy, just a fantastic 4 or 5 bedroom house for like $2,300 a month. I mean, it was amazing. So you want to know, you know, what does it look like? Are we going to travel? What are we going to do? What is my desired lifestyle cost? I know some people who are just, and I guess when you get, you know, there's a psychology when you retire. As soon as you retire, you become what's called the go-go people. So as soon as you retire, you want to travel a bunch, do a bunch of things, go around the world and stuff like that. And then you get a little older, maybe in the 80s or 70s, and it starts to get the slow go. So we go go-go, slow go, and then you hit the late 80s, and then what happens?
No-go.
You got it, no-go. So go-go, slow go, and no-go. Now, the go-go time is we don't have a lot of health care, but we got a lot of travel expenses and things like that. Slow go is we're having a little bit more expense in terms of medical and whatnot, but we're not traveling so much. No-go is we got a lot of medical expenses. We might even have memory care issues, right? But we're not going anywhere. You know, we're at home or we're somewhere else. And you want to just ask yourself, because this is the thing that, you know, when I talked to my grandma back when she was 78, we decided to put her money in this annuity. She was supposed to die at 88. That was the break even for the company, right? Well, she didn't die at 88. She didn't die at 89. She didn't die at 90. She didn't die at 95. She didn't die at 100. And what is the company doing? Sending her checks every month. You know, I figured out that we got into their pockets $960,000. She was supposed to die at 88, but she didn't. And they kept sending checks, $5,000 a month, and we got about $960,000 more out of them than we ever put in. So that was a good deal. But it doesn't always work that way, right? So retirement time. Let's talk about that real quick. Define what retirement means. We talked about that a little while ago. Run the numbers on income expenses, because that's what it all boils down to, really. Blake and I go out and do all these people at Lockheed and Mercedes-Benz, and we talk to them about retirement, and what it all comes down to is how much money are you going to need to run the show every month? Isn't that what it's all about? And you got special expenses here and there. You got to have a new car every once in a while. You got to replace the roof or the kitchen or whatever it is. But for the most part, how much money do you have coming into the house every month, and how much is going out? And what are you spending it on, right? How much do you need? So that's what we do, run those numbers. Plan for Social Security, that's a part of it. Create strategies to help running out of money. That's the number one thing that we find now. That's the issue. Running out of money, people living too long and living out their assets. And part of that is because of the long-term care, the long-term care need. We run these plans for people, and if they die right on time, no problem. But if they happen to have 5 years of health care issue, where we have to have home health care, what does home health care cost, by the way? On average, about $15 an hour, right? So $15 an hour, but you've got to have home health care for what, 24 hours? So 15 times 24 times 30 days a month, you know, you're at $10,000 a month just for one nurse. More than that. I've had where we've had to have 2 nurses come in because we had 2 families. The guy was really big, and the wife was not able to do it, so we had to have 2 nurses 24 hours. And we were going through about $22,000 a month. A month. And the guy retired, he probably had about a $4 or $5 million estate. And if his wife had not died when she did, she would have had to go into Medicaid. Yes, we went from a $5 million estate all the way down to going to have to go on Medicaid. But now, in all fairness, they had a daughter that was, I would say, misallocating their funds. You know what I'm saying? And so much so that we had to get rid of her because it was not good. So, retiring comfortably, living comfortably in retirement, you got to factor in health care. That's the one thing that people don't think about health care, and they don't think about what else? Inflation. When you guys were children, what's the most expensive that you remember a stamp being, or the cheapest you ever remember a stamp being? 3 cents, 3 cents? In 1965, a stamp was 5 cents. In 1967, it was 6. By 1970, it was 10. Okay? It had doubled in 5 years. Did the act of mailing a letter change? Did it somehow become more expensive? No. It's that the dollars became less valuable. Okay? The act of mailing a letter has never changed. You have an envelope, stick something in it, put it together, put it in the mailbox, put a stamp on it, boom. That's it. It hasn't changed since the Pony Express days. Health insurance, Medicare options. I have never seen our health insurance situation in the worst case. I mean, it is horrible. It just really is. I'm not even going to go into that. But health is important. You know, eating right, some exercise. You've heard this stuff. I don't need to talk about it. You know, the muesli or whatever you need, the high grains and that type of thing. Whatever it is, you know it more than me. So, and be smart about healthcare consumption. You know, an HSA plan. So if you have a high deductible, you might want to get a health savings account plan. That's where you put money in a tax deductible basis, and then you can spend it sort of in a tax-free basis, but you can spend it for health care rather than spending it out of your checking account. Now, building a legacy, building a family legacy. You know, what is your family all about? You've seen these family crests. You saw where the Duke and Duchess of Sussex just got a new crest. Did you see that? Okay, so, you know, they have their crest, and they're going to define what their crest is going to be about in their family legacy. Well, we do the same. We don't have to be the Duke and Duchess to have our own legacy. You know, what do you want to have happen with your hard work? You can't live here forever. We all have to just share this planet and take our time, and then we're out of here. But then when you leave, what is it that you're going to leave behind? You know? Let me ask you this question. How many of you remember the name of your great-grandfather? Besides Earl. How many remember the name of your great-great-grandfather? Earl, don't answer any more questions. Yeah, that's the thing. You don't know your great-great-grandfather. I have no recollection whatsoever. As far as I'm concerned, he never existed. But the man lived. He was born. He worked. He grew up. He had a family. He cried. He laughed. Right? But his entire life is now forgotten. And that's a little sad, I know, right? It's a little sad. But what about the Rockefeller family? Think about them. Do they know the name of their great-great-grandfather? You bet they do, every single one, because there's a trust with his name on it, and they're all getting checks, or they're all getting charitable, you know, things that they can do with their charities and stuff. So you want to put a little thought into it, I think. What values do you want to pass on? What's important to you? You know, what's your philanthropy? How does that fit into your world? Or does it? It doesn't have to, but if it does, what are things that are important to you? And what are these grandkids? What are the great-grandkids going to think about you? What are they going to remember you for? And how can you involve members of your family right now? I mean, we're in and out of this life in about 90 years or so, right? And we leave behind loved ones. And we leave behind actions that we did when we were here. And over time, that sort of dissipates. And all those people that we loved leave the planet, right? And then what's left behind? You know? And that's when you start thinking about that and talking about that, that opens up bigger issues. You know, what am I about? What is my life about? What do I stand for? What do I care about? What is the purpose of my life? Right? You didn't think you were going to hear that today, did you? right? So pitfalls. This is kind of funny. The baby boomers, God bless them, they don't have any clue about this long-term care coming up, right? They're going to live longer than they thought, and they don't have the money to pay for the long-term care that they're going to need. And I tried to get them to buy long-term care insurance. I know it's expensive, but I tried to get them to put some money away for long-term care. But half of them don't think it's going to happen. Well, let me tell you, if you're age 65 today, there's an 80% chance that you're going to need something at some time in the future. Rarely do people just die in their sleep. There's always some time there where we've got to have some health care. Generation X, this is me. Most of them don't have an overall strategy. We still think we're young. I'll be 47. I'm starting to have hip issues. I can't read as well. I have to use reading glasses now. This aging thing is real, right? They all told me, hey, when you get older, it's going to be harder to lose weight. Well, they're right. I didn't think it was true, but it's true. Things start breaking down. I don't even want to tell you this, but the other day I put hair gel on my toothbrush. I'm embarrassed to say it.
Straighten out your teeth?
I almost wanted to take a picture. I'm like, I just put hair gel on my toothbrush. Now, I was thinking about a lot of stuff, but you see where this is headed, right? I mean, I've got a lot of clients with Alzheimer's, and I'm starting to wonder, is this contagious? I don't want to shake their hand anymore. I'm just kidding. Generation Y, they're not investing enough. They don't have any emergency savings, and the poor millennials are just clueless, folks. I'm sorry to say. They can't even count change. And I'm not making that up. They can't tell the time on a that's right, on a yeah, and they can't count. They never heard of the Holocaust even. I mean, there's some real problem here. They aren't even remembering history, right? And they all think communism, socialism is a good idea. They're voting for Bernie, what's his name? And I like the guy. Trust me, I really like the guy. But man, you got to be realistic. We can't just pay for everything. There's got to be, we've got to have a budget. We've got to stay within it. So I really worry about the millennials. And it's no joke. Just for fun, go to like a Chick-fil-A and just pay in change. Pay in change. Take some change with you and just pay in change. Some quarters and some dimes and some nickels, like the old time, and see what happens. Just see what happens. Okay, that's all I'm saying. So here's an activity that we could possibly do to wrap this whole thing up and bring it under sort of one umbrella. And, they think about, corporations have mission statements and charities have mission statements. Well, you could have a mission statement for your family, your whole family, and it sounds a little funny, but, it makes sense because you stick it on your refrigerator and you have, a vision about what your family is all about and how everybody should sort of move with this. It's nothing too technical. Keep it on your fridge, review it with your family, and sort of an everyday guide to sort of, think back, what are we all about? Well, we're philanthropic. Here's sort of an example to live a life full of love, compassion, and adventure in a way that supports our community, enriches our faith, strengthens our character, and helps us grow closer as a family. If you throw that on the fridge and your kids see that all the time and the grandkids see it and you talk about it every once in a while, maybe some of that will wash off. Let's see. We've got the first thing you want to do is just kind of sit down and write out words that you think describe you or you would like to describe you. We want to be a loving family. We want to be compassionate. We want to work hard. We want to be educated. We want to be, part of our community. Maybe we want to have some service in there. And maybe it's specific, maybe we're part of a military family, or maybe we really love animals, or maybe we have somebody in our family who needs special needs. There's a lot of special needs children out there. So just an idea to sort of a way to come up with a sort of a family activity, which maybe you could do around Thanksgiving or something if it's should be pretty quick. These are ways that we can help. I know most of you in here are already clients, so we've already had this discussion, but we can always analyze where you are today, talk about the different strategies that are out there. We're not pushing anything. We're not selling anything. We are actually fiduciaries. So if you're a client of ours, we have a legal duty to put your interests first. It's not, there's no commissions or anything like that. It's a legal duty. So that's why it's always fee-based. So the better you do, the better we do. The worse you do, the worse we do. So there's no conflicts of interest. Realistic expectations. A lot of times, I remember back in the 90s, during the dot-com boom, you know, it was like year after year after year, 20%. To the point where people said, if I'm not getting 20%, something's wrong. I expect 20% out of my portfolio. Was that realistic? No, it was not realistic.
Remember, we used the term the new economy.
The new economy, right. That's right. And of course, you always want to make changes. Obviously, many of you who have been reading my letters know that we expect a market crash coming up in about 18 months or so. So you probably have been reading my letters. You know what our plan is to do. Yes, sir.
What's the reason you expect a crash?
A monetary contraction was as interest rates rise and we take money off the table, we're taking money out of the economy. At some point, there is what's called the Mandrake mechanism unwinds. And because every time there's money out in the system, it sort of grows exponentially. Well, it depends on where interest rates are. If you look at the last crash occurred at not necessarily, I'm not picking a date as much as I'm picking a rate. The last crash occurred at 5.25 of the Fed funds rate. It's almost certainly going to be less than that this time. The question is how much less? Would it be 4? I don't know. I don't think so. I think it will be lower because there is so much money in the system. So for us, we're going to pick 2.75 as what we call our warning track. Once we hit 2.75, for every quarter a point thereafter that they raise, we're going to move 10% out of the riskier stuff. And we're just going to continue to do that until it crashes, and then we'll move back, just like we did in 2008. The only thing that did well in 2008, Earl, the only thing. What's in the Coke formula, Earl? I'm not going to tell you. What's in the Coke formula? I don't know. There's a lot of stuff in the Coke formula, right? But I'm not going to tell you what it is. But you guys that are clients will figure it out. Okay, how we can help. If you've got some kids, you want them to come in, we'll be happy to talk to them, especially as a family meeting here. I know that like for several of you, we do work with your children. We do work with multiple generations. We like that. And we can really help. Just like the other day, a lot of times we end up doing mediations. You know, how much should we spend on this? Well, we think we're getting this return of cash and we should spend it and split it out. Oh, no, we want to keep it and save it. You know, we can mediate that stuff. We do it all the time. And objective guidance. So a lot of times clients will come to us and just want some objective guidance. I'm buying a house or I'm selling a house, whatever it may be. So these are ways that we can help. And all of you know that you have an open door policy. You can give us a call. You can email us. You know, we're open to talk. Any questions about any of the things I've talked about here? Listen, I don't have children. So I can't say that I really know what I'm talking about when it comes to raising kids. But I can tell you that I have had a ton of clients that have had a ton of kids, and it looks to me like no one really knows what they're talking about when they're having kids because the kids are different and people are different, right? But I do know kind of about this stuff, and I do know about fairness, and I can sort of help you when it comes to, because a lot of times with parents, you know how it is with family members, it's a lot easier to believe a stranger sometimes than it is your own family member, especially if it's like a parent or a child, you know what I mean? So a lot of times getting a stranger to sort of mediate things carries a little more weight than just, you know, another family member, if that makes any sense. We're happy to do that. Any questions from anybody about anything, except for the secret Coke formula? But the truth answer to your question is treasuries are the only thing that did well in 2008. The 20-year treasury was up 30%. You know? So our plan is to start off with the shorter term treasuries and then migrate to the longer term treasuries as we get closer and closer to 4%. Okay? There's never been a time where 10-year treasuries were paying 5% or more. Well, I should say it this way. There's never been a time where the market has crashed when the 10-year treasury was under 5%. Now, that doesn't mean it can't happen because interest rates are lower than they've ever been historically. So I wouldn't put too much credence in that statistic. Any other questions?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Earlier you were talking about money, for example.
Yeah.
Mark Howard was just talking about this morning about how America, how the world is beginning to get away from money so much and dealing with plastic so much. The love and the feeling of when I give you a $10 bill, I know what I'm doing. When I'm giving you my credit card, it's probably best stated, millennials, and go back and work on them a little bit,
Right.
have no clue what a dollar bill is.
Yeah.
Where and a piece of plastic, a simple piece of plastic, that gives them satisfaction.
Yeah. So if you are raising millennials, God bless you.
On the heels of what this fellow just said, is there like a book or some source that you could recommend for millennial age, other than coming in for meeting, which kids may not be available, maybe some websites or books or?
I would love to tell you that I know that there are, but I don't know what they are. Yeah, I would just ask I would ask somebody else. She's a parent, and